A big hello and welcome to the Teens and AI virtual panel discussion on accelerating action, making AI accessible for all, as part of our IWD 2025 campaign delivered in partnership with Sage, Sage Foundation, and Red Hat. My name is Bev Chislett, and I am the head of marketing here at Teens and AI. I'll be your moderator for today's panel. At Teens and AI, we are driven by a mission to empower young people to harness technology for social good, creating a fair world where everyone has an equal opportunity to maximize their potential. We inspire teens to explore a future in tech and AI through collaborative, hands-on learning experiences. This year's International Women's Day theme, Accelerate Action, deeply aligns with our core values. We believe that fostering diversity and inclusion is not just a moral responsibility, but a key driver of innovation, creativity, and meaningful change. By amplifying diverse voices and perspectives, we can fuel bold solutions for the complex problems of our ever-evolving world. At Teens and AI, we don't just talk about change, we take action. We create spaces where young minds can learn, collaborate, and inspire one another to push boundaries, challenge norms, and drive impact. By accelerating action together, we can shape a future where technology serves everyone and leaves no one behind. We hope this insightful discussion sparks ideas, fuels ambitions, and inspires each of us to take action. Let's get started. I am truly inspired by those who share the stage with me today, a dynamic group of 4 remarkable women who have been at the forefront of championing inclusion in their respective fields. Unfortunately, Jen Dudek, our panelist from Red Hat, will not be able to join us for today's panel. However, we are delighted to welcome Susie McDade, also from Red Hat. With 12 years at Red Hat, Susie has held multiple leadership roles within the people team, including leading EMEA recruiting and currently serving as HR business partner for global services and EMEA sales. She began her career in executive search and change management and thrives on the challenges of global roles, embracing cultural diversity and varied perspectives to drive better outcomes. A fun fact about Susie is that she landed her first 3 post-university jobs thanks to her Russian skills. So well done for that. Thank you, Susie, for making the time for us to contribute to this very important conversation. We're also delighted to introduce Bronwyn Dorrfield, the Director of Sage's Data and AI Academy within the Learning and Development team. Bronwyn leads the Academy's learning initiatives, empowering employees to harness the full potential of data and artificial intelligence in their roles. Bronwyn brings a growth mindset to her global work, collaborating across cultures and functions to advance AI adoption and foster continuous learning. Passionate about inclusivity and future readiness, she ensures Sage and its people stay at the forefront of technological advancements. Engaging regularly with colleagues, Bronwyn is dedicated to cultivating an environment that encourages personal and professional development, inspiring individuals to embrace AI-driven innovation and transformation. Bronwyn, we are so excited to have you with us today, and welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Our next panelist is Kimberly Fuqua, Director of Global Customer Success for the EMEA region at Microsoft, where she has spent 26 years driving customer success and advocating for diversity, equity, and inclusion. She is also the founder of Luminous Leaders, a leadership development, purpose-driven leadership through coaching, mentorship, and community engagement. Kimberly has played key roles in initiatives like Blacks at Microsoft and the Microsoft Netherlands Diversity and Inclusion Council, fostering inclusive workplaces across the tech industry, As a global DEI motivational speaker, she inspires individuals and organizations to embrace equity-driven change. With a career spanning services sales and licensing for both commercial and public sectors, Kimberly brings deep industry expertise and a passion for people-first leadership. Welcome, Kimberly.
Thank you, Bev.
And we are so happy to introduce you to Ahana Chakraborty, our final panelist, an alumna of Teens in AI and student at King's College London Mathematics School, who has a passion for climate conservation and technology. She has also participated in a number of Teens in AI hackathons and accelerators since the age of 11, enjoying both the learning experience and the impact these events have on others. An avid scuba diver, Ahana actively participates in marine conservation research, combining a love for the ocean with a commitment to environmental sustainability. Welcome to the panel, Ahana. It is a pleasure to have you all with us. We are truly honored to have such an incredible group of women with us today. I'm excited to hear their insights on how we can accelerate action and drive meaningful change across industries and communities. Now that we've all got to know each other, let's open the floor for our first question. Our theme for today's discussion is accelerate action. Two very powerful words that underscore the importance of creating environments where diverse perspectives are not only welcomed, but actively encouraged. With our first question, I'll open the floor for each of you to share your perspectives. With AI skills demand growing by 450% in the last 5 years alone, what strategies can companies like Sage, Red Hat, and Microsoft adopt to help close the talent gap and meet the increasing demand for skilled professionals? Bronwyn, shall we start with you?
Yeah, sure. Great question. Thanks, Bev. I think for me, what it's firstly looking at is from the internal AI strategy side of things, understanding what is your company's strategy, where are you at, what level are you at as far as your skills within the business and your level of talent, and then where are the gaps and how do you prioritize that and look at the timelines that you've got in order to get to that point. The reality is, although that AI has become more popular in the last 2 to 3 years, really it's been around for a number of years in some form or other. It's only really, as I say, since generative AI that there's been more hype around it. But I mean, for us at Sage, and I know from some of my other panelists as well, it'll be the same, but we've had a AI department for the last 8 years working extensively in this space. And it's those subject matter experts that can then support this as things are evolving at such a rapid pace, to be able to help us in driving that strategy forward and being clear in the business. So we look at the strategy as what is our strategy for our customers, what is our strategy for our colleagues, and what is the strategy that we're looking at for the greater good in society, and how can we support in all the three of those areas.
Thank you for that insightful perspective, Bronwyn. Would anyone else like to share their thoughts from the panel?
Sure. Oh, I'm happy to. Didn't mean to cut anyone off, but I do want to talk about what we're doing at Microsoft. And we're working really hard, as Bronwyn said, it's been around for a while, but now that it is a household term, AI, we're working really hard to make it real, relatable, and accessible, especially for young people. We have a really simple vision. We want to help every young person become not just an AI user, but a person who creates AI. So we've got programs like Microsoft Make Code, Minecraft Education Edition. We have a platform called AI for Good. And all of these options, all of these programs provide students as young as 12 years old the ability to build projects that really matter, not just for themselves, but for their communities as well as for the world, really. They are doing things like improving mental health all the way to fighting climate change. One really good example of this is a group of teenagers in Kenya who use Microsoft Azure AI and machine learning tools to help farmers predict crop disease outbreaks, thereby helping to prevent those outbreaks, but also to increase their crop. And these weren't professionals, these were students, just like many of the people on the call right now. And we continue to partner with schools and nonprofits worldwide. We want to offer, and we continue to offer, we're offering it right now, free digital skilling, certifications, hackathons, mentoring, because we know it's not just about access. It's also about motivation and inspiration. And that's why we feature young innovators on our Microsoft Learn platform. We believe you don't have to wait to be great. So lastly, I'll say that we've got an AI National Skills Initiative, and we're partnering with governments over in 20 countries to have over 1 million learners in each of those countries, collaborate with local communities, and build content that's tailored, practical, and powerful. And our strategy is simple, just like our vision: start early, teach hands-on practical skills, share real-life compelling stories, and stay committed to the cause.
Susie.
Oh, wow. I wish I had gone first. That's a really hard act to follow. But I'll start by giving some kudos to Microsoft by also sharing that a couple of months ago I was personally on a weekend trip in Berlin, and I happened to stumble into a co-creation space hosted by Microsoft in a really nice coffee shop with a lot of resources for anybody who walked in to learn about AI and get their fingers kind of involved and their brain sparkling and really kind of inspired by what AI could do. And I was just really impressed by this super open approach of this co-creation space for absolutely anybody. And there were young people in there, old people in there, business people in there. So that was really inspiring to see of this is how we help alleviate the fear of what AI could do and really turn it into motivation for the masses of how AI could change the world for the better. So coming over to how are we at Red Hat thinking about this and what we're doing at Red Hat. On the one hand, we also think about how can we build skills that are required for the AI world, especially for the young generation, right? I think you're all in such an exciting time to start your learning careers and your early thinking about where your career could take you, because you're on the forefront of how this technology is changing our world. We already see it in the company every day that AI is changing how we do jobs. I'm in HR, so I've touched recruiting in the past, I've touched talent management. I already see HR, AI changing every job that we have in the company. And this journey has just started. So I think all of you will be at a fantastic starting point to help shape this journey. For us at Red Hat, of course, we want people to know about our technology and our products. And one way we do this, especially for people early in their career, is through Red Hat Academy. So we work with universities and colleges and schools to help get people educated, give exposure to our products, and get certified. But more importantly, and a great opportunity for not just young people, but of course also young people to get involved, are really the open source projects and communities out there that do a lot of fantastic work, really across pretty much anything you can imagine in the software world. There are projects that are probably resonating well for teens in AI that give back to the greater good, like Project Kepler, which is around sustainability. But also really projects where you can get involved and get a broader perspective on all aspects of software engineering. Because I think, and I'll close with that, my colleague from Sage said it, technology is changing fast and ever faster. So the most important skill we all need, and we will all have to continue to build, is really to adapt and to continue learning, because AI is different today already than what it was 6 months ago, and it will continue to change.
Well, for sure. I must say that our young people of today. So when I say young people, I'm saying the younger, the generation that we are working closely with at Teens and AI, the 11 to 19-year-olds, especially for our AI adventures and all of our flagship programs that we deliver. They are young now. When I think of children being born now, can you imagine how more advanced they will be in their younger, like preteen years, in their AI development, even at that young age? When you think of little children now, playing games or whatever on their parents' smartphones, I mean, it's starting that young. I mean, we do want our children to, in fact, have critical thinking. We do want them to be able to, enjoy being a child. But at the same time, life is moving forward and technology is taking us with it. And AI is that direction. So thank you all for those really thoughtful responses. It's clear that closing the talent gap requires both strategic investment and inclusive collaboration. That brings us to our next question, where we'll explore how these challenges intersect with the evolving conversation around inclusion in the workplace. Bronwyn, I'm going to come over to you now. As the director of SAGE's Data and AI Academy, you work closely with employees across different countries and cultures. You have observed a shift in attitudes towards DEI, and given the growing need for AI talent, what are the most effective ways for companies, tech startups, and educational institutions to collaborate in developing the next generation of AI professionals?
Great question. So I think the first thing for me, and something that I pride ourselves with at Sage is living by your values to start with this. So as we think about, whether it's with DEI, we see the diversity and inclusion be a key part of doing the right thing and living by our values and human and being human. But we also make sure that we also quite a high performing business, and we need that diverse perspective and thinking. And you spoke about critical thinking and that coming in. It's those diverse perspectives that we remove some of the biases that we have in some of that thinking by making sure that you have diversity and in your organizations and in your recruitment. So this is one side of things, and making sure by having this that we bring, each of us are bringing the best part of ourselves to work. So that's in the now, but as we think about this going forward and developing our next generation of AI professionals, we need to look at how we role play this and make sure that we can be collaborative and sharing our talents that we have, and also look at AI from that accessibility point of view. So as things evolve year on year, the strategies are starting to evolve, and looking at how we can look at how the foundations start to support businesses. So we all have different community initiatives. Ours is Sage Foundation. Something we're looking at internally is how we can empower entrepreneurs, because that's like a key target audience for us, but also the entrepreneurs, not just for today, but for tomorrow, as things evolve, because we know that there's also going to be a lot more smaller businesses in the ways of doing things. So it's great to see some of these different changes that are taking place in the world, and the unique and different skills that are coming from this, and what are the capabilities that we can support and bring to life in this stage. So some things that we're doing from our side, and I encourage others to have a look at, is just partnering with one or two organizations that you can support, or as teenagers, where could you use your talents in volunteering to help others in areas that you might not, that with colleagues that might not know or students that might not know skills that you have, the advantage of knowing. I think that's one thing I've loved with Teens in AI, having partnering someone from an underprivileged society with someone that does have a privilege. In one of the workshops I was facilitating, being able to talk to someone that had running taps that was just a standard thing, and someone that didn't, and being able to connect the two and create that empathy. And I'm digressing slightly, but it's being able to connect people and create those right partnerships. For us, it's being able to look at what these partnerships are, and bringing them down to a regional level, so that it's more personalized to the regions. In AI, we see that things need to be more personalized, and it's becoming more of an expectation. So it will be more going forward as well. So depending on which region, depending on where you are, how can you support in your different area, be it helping with upskilling, helping with the creative thinking, for helping with skilling different people. It might be with funding from the digital side of things as well, if you don't have the time to personally give towards that as well.
What we're actually seeing at Teens in AI, which is absolutely amazing, and it really does give so much depth to what we are doing as an organization. We have a lot of young people who come through our programs, and as young as they are, they're actually giving back within the Teens in AI. So often we will have those teens who have perhaps been through our AI for Good incubator that takes place over the summer, or in the spring when we have our IWD campaign, which is the one that we are working to now. They're actually coming back and supporting the newbies who are coming through. So it's almost alumni supporting the newbies coming through the same program in any way that they can, whether as a local ambassador or even as a mentor on the ground in a live, in-person event, or supporting in other ways of information and sharing of experiences. So I truly understand what you're saying. It's all about almost changing the community to be thinking forward, right?
Definitely. And
Yeah.
there's such an important piece there around the mindset. I was listening to something the other day where they spoke about it's like riding a bicycle, where as you're starting to use AI, it's once you start bringing it into your ways of working and using it every day, it just becomes a natural piece. But it needs that support in those early days, to help you. So where can we be that support, and how can we pass it on and pass it forward?
Absolutely. Thank you, Bronwyn. It's encouraging to hear how collaboration across cultures and sectors can help shape a more inclusive AI workforce. I'd like to open the floor very briefly. Would any of our panelists like to add to Bronwyn's points before we move on? I think it's such a broad topic, isn't it?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like I've participated in many AI hackathons and accelerators through Teens in AI, and I feel like one of the main things I really loved, especially in the beginning when I didn't know much about AI, I didn't know really what it was, and I kind of just showed up because I saw an advert. I feel like I really enjoyed how we were working in teams of different age groups. I remember I was 11 in a team with a 15-year-old, an 18-year-old, and we were all teaching each other, and I feel like the collaboration and all the helping each other that occurs in the accelerators and the hackathons, that's really useful. And I feel like even hopefully we'll carry this on to the workplace and in our future lives. And I was also a local ambassador last year running a Teens in AI hackathon in London, and I feel like that also taught me a lot, because it wasn't just getting some teenagers from my school who may all have similar backgrounds. Although my school is fairly diverse, but they all go to the same school, they take similar A levels, they have similar interests. I was also reaching out to students who aren't even taking STEM A levels. There were people who wanted to be lawyers, people who wanted to be doctors, people who wanted to do a variety of things, but showed up to the events and learned a lot and got to collaborate with others and gain a lot of skills. And I heard from many people who want to be in a variety of industries how useful the hackathons were. So I feel like it really helps, even just bringing diverse people together with different backgrounds just to collaborate, even if their interests are completely different. I feel like everyone gains a lot from the experience.
Absolutely. It's not about trying to convert somebody
Yeah.
to go into tech and AI, right? This is about creating a community of appreciation and understanding, knowing where we are heading for in the world that we are living in today. And having, even though somebody wants to be a lawyer, that doesn't mean they don't have something to contribute to AI and technology in today's world, right? So, your perspective on that, I think, is absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to move on because the next question really feeds so well. Reflecting back to you, Susie, your work at Red Hat touches on another very powerful lever for inclusion and innovation, and that is open source. With projects like Instruct Lab, developed by IBM and Red Hat, democratizing AI development, how can businesses leverage the open source model to accelerate innovation and foster broader participation in AI?
But a lot of what Hannah just mentioned, right, was really kind of ringing a lot of like thoughts in my head around how relevant open source is to everything we do and how we can drive innovation. So I'm maybe kind of breaking it in two and first talk about open source in general, right? The belief at the core of open source is the belief that the best idea can really come from anywhere. And like Ahana said, it doesn't matter the age group. It doesn't matter where on the world you sit, what hierarchy level you are, right? Or which other positions you've held, who you know, all of that. At the core belief in open sources, it doesn't matter. The idea is that the more diverse the perspectives, the more curiosity and collaboration, the better the outcome. And I think that is, as a core principle, something companies can put to use across everything, not just AI, but specifically in a moment like now where companies are embarking on AI changing their world. Yes, the world of software development, but also the world of everything else, right? Adopting an open source methodology or an open approach, inviting feedback from all over the company. Hey, people, where do you see AI could add value? What processes could it improve? Which admin tasks could it get off our plate, right? How could we show up better for our customers if we use this? And to really invite insights from everybody, really being open. Maybe the accountant around the corner has a great idea of how we could revolutionize recruiting, right? Or maybe finance has a great insight of how we could improve a process for facilities, right? Being open to listen to diverse perspectives from around the globe, being able to incorporate that, release early versions often, like in open source, we speak about release often, release early, right? And iterate and improve. I think that can drive innovation and acceptance throughout the company, right? It takes a lot of the fear away, the more open we can be and the more all of us can be contributors rather than just receivers of something. Now, Instruct Lab, because you mentioned it, right, is an open source project. And not everybody on the call maybe knows what Instruct Lab is. Essentially, it looks at large language models, which are at the core of a lot of what's happening at the moment in AI. And instead of saying the data set behind the large language model is a black box that nobody has insight into, Instruct Lab takes an open source approach, right, and allows contribution to that large language model and the data set behind it, really allowing for more set of eyes, more diverse perspectives, more subject matter experts from different parts of the world and the industries to contribute, which then results in a better data set. For companies or universities or any group, actually, they can take Instruct Lab and fine tune it to whatever they need, right? So they can make their own version and fine tune it with their data, giving them more insight, but also kind of saying, what do I really need? And have this large language model open to their needs. So that's how kind of the democratizing of AI comes into play.
Oh, for sure. And when I think of what an LLM, say a large language model, in today's world, I think that's the part that the world knows of. There is so much to technology and AI that sits behind that nobody knows of, right? The great ideas can sometimes just be the seed. You don't need to know the tech behind it or the AI behind creating that solution or that idea or that concept. It's just the idea of somebody saying something in your team, but somebody else can develop it. But the fact is, you collaborated across the organization for a seed, and leave the rest to the professionals who are actually going to go, wow, that is a great idea. How can we make that work? And if I translate that into today's world of, you know, teens, I don't want to say children because I hope that they aren't yet, teens and adults, LLMs, these are the language models that people are using for generative AI today, right? There are so many of them popping up all over. And this is a great source of information. But again, it's one of those things, you can only get out of it what you put in. So the quality of what you put in is essentially the quality of what you're going to get out. So, this is where the skills and experience comes from. And I think that the world is at the moment is in the generative AI space of learning. The technical stuff, I think that's still one step behind, and that's where the data scientists are, the machine learners and so on. So, how amazing to have an organization, I think in all three of your organizations, to be honest, who have this culture and value set of including everybody in being able to develop content, whatever kind, developed by technology and AI, that actually is inclusive and creates that narrative. Thank you, Susie, for highlighting the power of open source in creating more inclusive pathways into AI. It's clear that when innovation is opened up, participation naturally broadens. And that brings us to a closely related area, the role of inclusion within the workplace itself. Kimberly, I'm going to turn to you now. In your work at Microsoft with employee resource groups, the DEI Council, and your own Luminous Leaders Initiative, you've seen the impact of workplace inclusion efforts. Can you share your views on the integration of DEI into the corporate landscape and an example of a DEI initiative that has driven meaningful and measurable change, especially in relation to open and transparent innovation in AI?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would love to say that what Susie has said, and Bronwyn, and what you said so far, I have seen that it is true. I have observed that it's everything you said about inclusion, about bringing people from different parts of the business, different parts of the company, and with different backgrounds, culturally, economically, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen time and time again that it's not just a corporate value that someone puts down in your standards of business conduct. It is an absolute strategic necessity, especially as we develop more advanced technology like AI, and Microsoft and others are going into quantum computing. I just recently read a book called Race After Technology, written by Ruha Benjamin. And in that book, she challenges us to go beyond the surface. We need to ask deeper questions about the systems and the assumptions that we are coding into our technology now and into the future. We need to ask, can these algorithms, can they also automate, just like they can automate productivity and equality, they can also automate inequality. And sometimes we think that just because it's technology, somehow it's neutral or somehow it's not biased. And that's not the case. And that's why integration, just as you asked the question, integration of inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility into corporate environments, especially in big tech, is not optional. It
Mhm.
must be how we build ethical, responsible, and truly innovative AI and technology. So at Microsoft, we do this through a cross-functional team called FATE. And FATE stands for, it's F-A-T-E. It stands for fairness, A for accountability, T for transparency, and E for ethics. And what that group does is it brings product engineering teams together with ethicists that are hired by Microsoft, so people who focus on the ethical part of technology, accessibility experts, and our typical Microsoft employee, typical but still smart Microsoft employee that are part of our employee resource groups that you mentioned. So groups like Asians at Microsoft, military at Microsoft, Blacks at Microsoft, women at Microsoft. And those people come together to challenge the assumptions that we make. Because as we said before, without inclusion, we cannot have the innovation that we need to stay competitive and to stay relevant in this market. A practical example of a great outcome of that FATE group and how it works together is when our disability and accessibility ERG co-developed, along with FATE and some of our engineering teams, a real-time captioning and transcription function into our Microsoft Teams product. And what was great about that was it wasn't just for inclusion of those folks that may have a disability that impacted their ability to use Teams, but it also helped with global collaboration. It also helped people like myself who only speak English fluently. I'm getting there for my Dutch friends and colleagues who only speaks English fluently. It helped me to be able to communicate in a multilingual fashion. So that innovation started with this accessibility, but then it expanded the value of the product for everybody, not just people within Microsoft, but also our customers. And that is how you do inclusive design. So I wanna make one last plea in my response here, and that is that we need to understand that we can't fix bias by just diversifying the pipeline of developers and creators of AI. We have to really reimagine what that pipeline looks like. And I want to start with the students that are listening and the teenagers that are listening to this call today. I want you guys to also think, and the adults, think about who sets the agenda with developing these AI systems? Whose problems are we trying to solve? And how are these systems evaluated to make sure that they are not harmful, that we're mitigating against bias and discrimination? And that's one of the things I do through my Luminous Leaders organization. I work with emerging talent, especially women and professionals from the underrepresented communities, because I want to equip them not just to participate in tech, not just to be a user, but I want them to learn how to effectively make their voices heard and valued so that they can reshape the tech industry and the AI conversation from the inside out.
I think the one thing that comes out of your response there is we almost need this, ethics by design.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is a term that I think is thrown around a little bit too loosely. But if you truly use the word by design in the sense that it's meant, it really does need to be that. And I think
if it becomes natural, right? Design
exactly.
And naturally a part of how you work, think, and operate.
Absolutely, absolutely 100%. And I think that, the programs that we run here as our flagships, the incubators, the hackathons, and so on, the most important thing that we teach is ethics.
Yep.
It is AI for good, and it is ethics on every level. It is critical to the learning of every single course. And in fact, it is part of even the AI Adventures courses that we deliver. There is an element of the ethics learning of you need to do it right, you need to do it well, but you also need to do it correctly and ethically.
Yes.
Right? Learning from the age of 11 in our context, the right way of doing things, knowing that there's a difference between right and wrong. That is ethics right there. So honestly, thank you, Kimberly, for that. It's clear that when DEI is meaningfully integrated into a company's culture, it not only fosters belonging, but also helps unlock more open and transparent approaches to innovation. Of course, inclusion also depends on access, which is what we've been talking about before, access to skills, to learning opportunities, and to support in adapting to change across communities as well. Bronwyn, I'm going to turn to you now too. In feeding into that, in your role at Sage, you focus on equipping employees with the skills to embrace AI. How can we ensure that upskilling in AI is accessible to everyone in an organization? And how can companies take practical action to build an inclusive workforce of the future?
Great. So I think it's very much about starting off in those foundational levels and making it tangible to everyone in the ways that they see it. So when you talk about accessibility, there's so many different ways of that, and making sure that making sure from a neurodiverse side of things, from where people are accessing the material from, depending on what their situations are, that we can make it available to them to be able to engage with. We also have to take into consideration what people's roles are, and depending on the role, what is relevant to them. If you've got someone in a sales position, what they need from AI is going to be very different to a developer, and their level of understanding that they require. And I think this is where it's so exciting, because there is a space for all of us within AI. And fundamentally, for each of us in these different personas and these different roles, it's about what is that understanding, what is our ways in which we're going to use it. And an important piece that you've just spoken to is around that responsibility, and using AI responsibly in our roles. And what we've tried to do, as we try to structure things as well, is make sure that we take the fundamental learnings, and how we create that, but also taking it to the next level and looking at how do people practice those skills, and so giving them environments to be able to practice those learnings, and bring in some real world scenarios that they can use in that, with a bit of support and guidance. So we have got some coaching that we do, and making sure that if they've got any questions, we can handhold them in those, and also have different working sessions around that. And then that sharing and collaboration that we've referred to a few times in this, as being able to share what's worked, what hasn't worked, what's failed, because we can learn as much from those failures as we can from the wins within this space. So it's really about making sure that in these areas, how are we being interactive in our sharing, and making sure from that accessibility that we're considering those different audiences that we're working with, and how we go about making the material available to the right people at the right time in the right environment for them. And I think, we could go into so many different details around this, but where AI plays a big role that you've spoken to is in helping us from this accessibility side of things, in the translations that are available. There's still some work that needs to be done, and fine-tuning that, but it's made things a lot easier for us to be able to have those discussions. From a neurodiversity side of things, it's amazing what it's been able to do. I've got two dyslexic children, and being able to help them in preparation for studies. There's so many different opportunities that we have there.
Fantastic. Thank you, Bronwyn, for those practical reflections on how organizations can create more inclusive pathways into AI for their employees. As we think about building the workforce of the future, it's just as important to consider how we're engaging and empowering the next generation of talent. Ahana, you bring a vital perspective, I think, to this conversation. As the youngest member of this panel, You have a unique perspective on promoting inclusion and diversity in the tech industry. You've been part of Teens in AI since you were 11. How has participating in Teens in AI program helped you overcome some of the barriers young people may face in accessing AI and tech careers? Is there one thing you think industry leaders can potentially help with?
Yeah, I would say, kind of as I was saying before, I really enjoyed and I've learned a lot from all the hackathons and accelerators from Teens in AI, especially because, when I started off, I had no idea what AI was. I mean, it was 7 years ago, so quite different to what it is now. But in any case, I was very new to the whole AI space, what is going on, and I feel like I've learned a lot in terms of coding and in terms of that kind of skill. But I've also learned a lot in terms of collaboration and voicing my ideas. And at the end of every hackathon, we would have a pitch, and I feel like I learned a lot about how to take whatever ideas my teammates and I have come up with and have maybe coded a demo for, and how to explain that to people who haven't been working on it, which I feel like is a really key skill to have been taught. I would say one of the more important things that I think in terms of inclusion that I felt was, so I started Teens in AI at girls. I think it was an International Women's Day hackathon. It was an all girls hackathon, so really a full circle moment there. And I really enjoyed it. Got to meet loads of amazing people, and that's when I started getting more into Teens in AI. But I would think that one of the important things when creating a team is not just to have like one type of person, as we were saying. And I think that some of my favorite hackathons and accelerators have been ones where there were boys and girls from different backgrounds working together. Um, in fact, for example, I was saying how I ran a hackathon involving people from my school and other schools. And my school, being a very maths specialist school, has like 80% boys. So when I came, it was very jarring to see like, oh, there's 5 girls in my whole year, like class. Um, and so when I was telling Elena, oh, I want to run a hackathon, she was like, cool. We have a requirement of about 60% girls. And my first thought was, where do I source the girls from? My whole, like, I can't have a school hackathon because there are simply not enough girls. And then I was like, this could be a good thing. Maybe let's reach it out to the wider London community. There'll be many people who want to participate who wouldn't otherwise get the chance to. And I reached out to so many people from other schools who have now told me they really enjoyed it. And some people got to stayed in contact with Teens in AI and have done future hackathons and other accelerators. And I feel like it's a good thing, the fact that people are trying to include more girls and more underrepresented communities in these spaces. But I feel like it's also important to work together with different groups. So I'm a big fan of kind of the mixed hackathons where we try and get many girls, but we also try and get people from a variety of different backgrounds to kind of share their ideas and share their perspectives and ways of thinking. I feel like that makes for the best collaboration and also makes the best products as well, because those are the hackathons where everyone's ideas are like crazy because everybody's brought something together, and when it comes together, those ideas are phenomenal. So yeah, I feel like companies should do a bit more of, when they're doing the outreach and trying to get teenagers into AI, I feel like they should do a bit more of, reaching out to a variety of people. I feel like a lot of company opportunities that I found out about are fairly like hidden, or only certain like schools are allowed to access them. So I feel like they should be more publicized to just the wider public so that more teenagers from different backgrounds can participate.
Absolutely, for sure. Thank you, Ahana. That was such a powerful reminder of how early exposure and meaningful support can open doors for young people in tech. It reinforces the need to create these inclusive systems that work for everyone, from the next generation of innovators to those already navigating today's workplaces. Reflecting back to now, while we've made strides in raising awareness around diversity and inclusion, there are still many communities and groups that continue to face significant barriers to equal access and opportunities. with the rise of AI and automation, how can we ensure these technologies reduce bias rather than reinforce existing inequalities, while also preparing employees for future AI-related roles, given that 65% of children today will work in jobs that don't yet exist? So I'm going to open this floor to, to all the panel to get an idea. We are running out of time. We've had such a great conversation, but we are running out of time. So let's do a quick round of thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. I'm happy to start, Bev. So I've already talked about what Microsoft is doing to embed ethics in AI, and we all agree that that's super important. Also talked about inclusive skilling initiatives that we have. So I want to focus on something else that's equally important, if not more so. And that's the human responsibility in shaping what artificial intelligence becomes, what it is now and what it will become. I don't know if most people know, but there is a fun fact, I'll call it, that the thing that we hold in our hand right now, our cell phones, our mobile phones that we have, is about 10 times more powerful than the computer that shot the folks in the US to the moon back in 1969. And I just want that to sink in for a second. So you're holding something in your hand that's 10 times more powerful than the computer that took humans to the moon about 50 something years ago. It's amazing, right? So that even tells us how great the responsibility is that we have to make sure that this technology is safe, ethical, fair for everyone. And one of the ways I think we can do that is we need to be aware that every digital interaction, every post, every comment, query, click, scrolling binge becomes training data. We need to treat our online behavior almost as if we're raising a child. And how would you raise a child? With care, with thoughtfulness, and with awareness of the long-term impact of what you're doing as a parent. And we need to treat AI just like that. The rise of AI is not just a technical challenge. Yes, we need a lot of technical skills and a lot of people who are interested in the technology side of it, but we also need to understand that it's a moral challenge. And there are wonderful regulations. I think the EU AI Act is really critical. I'm so glad that we have that in place in the EU. For those of you that may not know, I'm based here in the Netherlands. And this EU AI Act is helping set global standards on how we build AI that's safe, that's accountable, and that's aligned with fundamental human rights. And we support that at Microsoft because open innovation is safe innovation. Open innovation without oversight, though, can lead to unintended harmful impacts. So there's three things I want you guys to think about. At the company level, we have to go beyond compliance. We have to lead with integrity. We have to embed these values in the full product life cycle, just like we were talking about, Bev. It needs to be inclusive by design. From inspiration to implementation, we need to be thinking about inclusivity and mitigating bias and discrimination. As a tech industry, we need to treat ethics like infrastructure, ensuring that we've got diverse teams, inclusive design, and we've got reviews and evaluations that are built into the system. They must not be an afterthought. And then at the individual level, I'm pleading with everybody that, and that's all of us, that has any type of digital interaction, whether you're a student, a professional, a future innovator, you have to remember that every time you touch a digital product or service, every time you go online, you're shaping and raising AI. And if we want a future where AI is fair, responsible, and truly human-centered, it has to start with us. So we need to all help each other to raise AI to reflect the best of who we are, raise AI to reflect the wisest, most compassionate, and most inclusive version of ourselves.
For sure. I think as we come to our final question, I'd like to bring the conversation back to the panel where we've heard how inclusion efforts can open doors, but we also know that many communities still face persistent barriers. The accelerating pace of AI and automation brings both challenges and opportunities, demanding thoughtful action to ensure technologies reduce rather than reinforce bias and inequality, while preparing people for roles that may not yet exist. With that in mind, I'll now invite each of you to share one top tip for our audience. To all of you, what would the one key action companies should take to keep DEI a priority, or one step individuals can adopt daily to democratize AI, foster collaboration, and support education? You've got 10 seconds each. Okay, let's kick off with Ahana. Let's go with you.
I feel like I don't know, I feel like on a company level, if they're doing more outreach and trying to get teenagers involved, I think the main thing is as I was saying, just to have like wider outreach, reaching out to people from different backgrounds, and also people may not feel comfortable. They may not have been exposed to so many different people before, or worked in teams with so many like variety of perspectives and people with different backgrounds. So I feel like from the perspective of companies or people who are organizing these events, it's just useful to bear that in mind and to help people to collaborate and to ease them into this kind of working with people from different backgrounds.
Thank you, Ahana. Susie.
I would have three things. What Kim said was really powerful about treating AI as if we're raising a child. I think I'm going to steal your quote, Kim. That is really, really powerful. I would add to, we all have a responsibility to keep raising our awareness. How does AI work? How does technology work? And for being more inclusive, I would always say is like listen with an intent to understand and question your own assumptions. I think that will help us with AI, and it will help us with each other every day of the week.
Bronwyn.
I think for me, it's bringing both the inclusivity and the AI into our strategy. So it's front and center. By having it there and everyone focusing on that for a business, it feeds through into everything that you're doing in your day to day, and how you support it going forward.
Thank you, Kim.
Don't be afraid to use your voice. Speak up. When you see something needs to be fixed or done better, speak up, say it. It needs to be done better, or maybe even find a solution for it. But my tip is use your voice early and often.
For sure. I think that's those 5 comments right there could be the beginning of a brand new world. So thank you for those really meaningful contributions there. We've covered a lot of information and a lot of ground in our discussion today, and I'm sure many of you in our audience have your own thoughts, experiences, and questions to share. So we now have time. I think we are already 1 minute over time. So we would love to, get some questions out there from you guys. Please do put your questions in the Q&A only. In the meantime, we will kick off with the questions that we can see so far. We will have quite literally 5 seconds, okay, per question. So let's kick off. Our first question is being asked of Susie at Red Hat. Achieving true inclusion and representation in society is not solely the responsibility of one group. It requires active allyship and advocacy from everyone. What message would you share with individuals to inspire them to be part of this collective effort towards greater inclusion?
And I should give a 5-second answer on that.
Good luck.
My message would be, I totally agree. It's everybody's responsibility. It's not just one group to drive for more inclusion. But I think we all have to focus on what we can control, right? And what we can control are our own behaviors and the behaviors of those that are around us by sharing feedback, right? And
Right.
so my call to action would be lead by example as being somebody that is open and inviting different perspectives and that openly invites feedback on ideas that are shared because we model the way.
Okay, that's a good answer right there. Ahana, we have a question for you. As a young person, what challenges have you faced in finding inclusive spaces within education and extracurricular activities?
I would say a couple of things. Firstly, I feel like it's important, as I was saying, kind of just like also not just to have only women only spaces or just spaces for people of color. I feel like it's important to collaborate with everyone. So it has been a little bit challenging finding those spaces, but I feel like, for example, from Teens in AI, I've found many events where people are from a variety of backgrounds, which have been really useful. So it's just a little bit more, you've got to look for it, but it's definitely out there. The other thing I would say on a related note is that with the rise of everyone talking about inclusion and diversity, there's been also a rise of people saying things like, maybe you've got more opportunities because you're a woman or a person of color. And I feel like it's just important to remember that, we wouldn't be having all this diversity and inclusion if there wasn't a problem to solve. There's a problem to solve, hence we're trying to solve it. So I feel like it's just important to remind everyone that it's not that, oh, you're a woman, you've got more opportunities, that's why you're going, and doing all these things. I've had people been like, oh, why is there a hackathon only for women? And I'm like, there's many hackathons which are 80% male. You could participate in many hackathons. It's important to remember that and just to be like, aware and to welcome everyone rather than trying to exclude people because, DEI is trying to help them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Moving quickly on, we have a general question for all panelists to consider. Reflecting back at any stage of your own career pathway, could you tell us about any inclusivity barriers or inclusivity enablers you may have encountered yourself? What do you think could be done to remove barriers for girls and young women who come after you? I think let's just focus on perhaps Bronwyn and Kim for this one. Bronwyn, shall we kick off with you?
Yeah, sure. I love this one. So I think for me, firstly, it's about believing in yourself and being curious. So often as women, specifically, we have this imposter syndrome. We think we're not good enough, and we think that, and I also feel that other women, we don't encourage each other enough and boost each other up. So what can we be doing to support each other? So I encourage each of you to ask questions, lean into the unknowns, and learn through doing. It's often the biggest learnings come from our failures, but they're only failures if we don't learn from them.
For sure. Kim?
I'd say growth mindset. That's an enabler. I'll say mindset in general can be an enabler or it can be something that blocks you. So reframe it, anything negative from a mindset perspective, into a growth mindset. And that's building off what Bronwyn said. You need to be always curious, always thinking about how can I learn? If I don't know today, how can I learn so that I will know tomorrow or know in the next moment? And for me, that has been a huge enabler in my career. I never said that I couldn't do it. I might say, I don't know how yet, but I will learn how if I need to. So have that growth mindset. I think that's a huge enabler. And it also helps you to deal with people who spoke like Ahana said, who tell you, oh, you're only a diversity hire, or you only got that job or got into that hackathon because you're a woman. Usually, if you have a growth mindset, you understand that there are people who don't have a growth mindset and who think like that. And your growth mindset will help you be resilient and overcome comments and attitudes like that.
Thank you. Right. We've also got a share load more questions in the Q&A that clearly we're not going to be able to answer all of them, but I'll choose two very, very quickly. One of them is Is formal data science education the only effective way to develop AI development skills in a reasonable time frame that can deliver business value? Who would like to take that one? Perhaps Susie?
As a former recruiter and HR person, I'm going to start and then hopefully somebody else will chime in. Actually,
Okay.
I think the great thing about where AI is now is the opposite to what the question alludes to. If I think back 15, 20 years ago, or even longer when I was in school, if you wanted to go into IT, it was absolutely clear you had to study math. If you wanted to go into data, you had to learn how to deal with an SQL database or become a wizard with Excel, etc. Right? Fast forward to today, I use AI to build me a really cool Excel comparison or a great data presentation, right? So I do think actually AI has lowered the entry barrier for software engineering. My husband is a software engineer. He uses AI every day to improve how he writes tests, how he identifies a root cause for something. He recently migrated to a system on a complete different programming language. And he was telling me over lunch, is like, I'm able to do stuff in this language that took me a decade to learn in the old language because AI is telling me how. So I actually think it's the opposite. Now, if you don't have a IT background, will you become the next PhD person that invents the next language model? Maybe not. But I think the entry barrier actually, I think, has been lowered, which makes this so exciting.
Fantastic. Okay, I do think that we are quite literally 8 minutes over time. So let's close down. I would very much like to close with saying, as we bring this really inspiring panel discussion to a close, I wanted to extend my deepest gratitude to our incredible guests, Bronwyn, Susie, Kimberly, and Ahana. Your insights and experiences and unwavering commitment to driving change have been truly remarkable. Each of you has brought a unique and invaluable perspective to this conversation. Bronwyn, your leadership in fostering AI-driven learning and upskilling employees for the future has been truly inspiring. Susie, your people-first approach and commitment to cross-cultural collaboration reflect the leadership needed to shape inclusive, high-impact workplaces and should be an aspiration for all. Kimberly, your passion for customer success and advocacy for diversity, equity, and inclusion in tech has set an incredible example for inclusive leadership. Ahana, your commitment to climate conversation and your enthusiasm for AI and innovation for good at such a young age remind us all of this limitless potential of future generations. Each of you has left an indelible mark on this discussion, and I know our audience has been profoundly inspired by your insights and calls to action. As we leave here today, let's carry forward the wisdom and the determination of our panelists have shared. Accelerating action isn't just an idea, it's a necessity for driving innovation, inclusion, and lasting impact. We have so much to be thankful for in this call, but on behalf of Teens in AI, our partners Sage Foundation, and Red Hat, and our panelists, thank you all for joining us today. Stay connected with us on Teens in AI social media channels for updates, including next week, everybody. Next Thursday, we have our IWD Global Demo Day Finals. That's our last major event of this year's IWD 2025 Global Techathon campaign, where the global semi-finalists will showcase their projects for a chance to win. This event is the finale in what has been an action-packed 3 months for our participants. And on the 1st of May, we have a Teens in Action Forum workshop delivered in partnership with Sage and Sage Foundation on the topic of no-code AI, creating AI without a technical background. Now, boy, does that feed into everything that we've worked on today. And we have our AI for Good Incubator, a 5-day virtual bootcamp from Monday, the 28th of July to Friday, the 1st of August. So we have a lot going on. In our thank you email, we will include this information for anybody who wants to find out more or sign up. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us on this virtual panel. We've enjoyed having you, and thank you for the hundreds of questions asked. And I'm just so sorry we only got to answer 6 or 7 of them. Thank you so much, everybody, and thank you for your time today and our panelists.